House sitting always seemed like easy money. Look after someone's place, keep the plants alive, maybe collect the mail, and pocket a decent fee. This gig was at a sprawling property far outside town, nestled deep in woods I didn't know. The owners were away for 2 weeks, basking on a beach somewhere, leaving me with strict instructions and a key. It was idyllic at first, quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where you could hear your own thoughts. That was until the storm rolled in. The weather reports had warned of something big, but I hadn't paid much attention. Living in the city, you get used to weather warnings that don't amount to much. Out here, though, it was different. The sky turned an unnatural shade of bruised purple early in the evening, and the wind picked up with an almost human howl. Rain started as a gentle patter, quickly escalating into a torrential downpour that hammered against the windows, loud enough to make conversation impossible, even if I'd had someone to talk to. I was settling in for the night, trying to read by the warm glow of a lamp, feeling cozy despite the tempest outside. Then it happened, not with a dramatic crash of thunder or a flicker, but a sudden, absolute cessation. The lamp died. The refrigerator's hum vanished. The faint background noise of the house ceased. Total unyielding darkness swallowed everything. The silence that followed the storm's roar was just as deafening, only punctuated now by the continued deluge outside and the pounding of my own heart. A widespread blackout, I figured. Not uncommon during a severe storm, especially out here. I fumbled for my phone, hoping to check news reports or maybe text someone. Anyone, just to feel connected. But the screen stayed stubbornly blank. No signal. The landline was dead too. Isolated. Truly isolated. The initial annoyance of losing power quickly morphed into a prickly unease. The sheer, overwhelming darkness felt heavier than any I'd experienced before. A physical weight pressing in. That's when the other sound started. Beyond the relentless drum of the rain and the moan of the wind, there was something else. It began subtly, easily dismissed as the house groaning in the storm or branches scraping against the walls. But it grew, becoming more distinct, a rhythmic thump-thump against the side of the house, low and heavy, like something being dragged. Then, a different noise, a slow, deliberate scrape, moving along the foundation near one of the ground floor windows. It wasn't random. It was purposeful. It circled the house, pausing, starting again. My breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't an animal. It sounded like effort, like something large and unwieldy being maneuvered through the thick mud and pouring rain just outside the walls. The sounds intensified, focusing now on the points of entry. A light, hesitant tap at the back door, followed by the unmistakable click of the doorknob being tested. Then silence there, before a similar, careful attempt at the front door. The scratch at the windows returned, not a frantic breaking attempt, but a slow, deliberate drag of something hard against the glass, back and forth, back and forth. It felt like they were mapping the house, testing its defenses, or perhaps simply letting me know they were there. The air in the house felt colder, charged with a silent tension. I clutched my phone, the dead screen a cruel joke, the flashlight app my only remaining comfort. I knew, with chilling certainty that whatever was outside wasn't looking for shelter from the storm. Driven by a desperate need to see, to understand, I crept towards a front window, the phone's flashlight beam held low, ready to snap it off. Peering through the rain-streaked glass, the darkness outside was profound. The storm was still raging, but the rhythmic sounds had stopped. For a long moment there was only the rain. Then, at the very edge of the weak flashlight's reach, I saw it. Not a person, not a distinct shape, but a pair of eyes. They weren't animal eyes. They were too steady, too reflective in a way that felt wrong, like polished glass rather than living tissue. They caught the faint bleed of light from my phone for just a second, fixed directly on the window before the light source vanished, as if they'd sensed my observation. I recoiled, stumbling back into the oppressive darkness of the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. I stayed frozen for what felt like an eternity, listening, straining to hear anything over the storm. The silence from outside continued, but now a new, more terrifying realization dawned. Was the silence because they had left, or because they were no longer outside? Slowly, cautiously, I moved through the house, my phone light illuminating brief segments of familiar rooms that now felt utterly alien. I checked the back door. It was unlocked. I distinctly remembered locking it earlier. The front door, same. The latch was unhooked, the deadbolt retracted. There were no signs of forced entry, no splintered wood, no broken locks. It was as if someone had simply turned the handle and walked in. Or perhaps, more unsettlingly, they had a key. The house felt violated, not just by an external threat, but by a presence that had perhaps always belonged, waiting for the opportune moment. Panic began to set in, a cold dread that seeped into my bones. I wasn't just trapped. I was potentially sharing the house with whatever had been outside. I retreated upstairs, finding what seemed like the most secure room, a small office with a single, high window. Barricading the door with a heavy desk, I huddled in the corner, the flashlight beam shaking in my trembling hand. I heard it then, the faint creak of a floorboard downstairs, followed by another, slow, deliberate, moving towards the staircase. They were inside. The footsteps were careful, measured, unlike someone stumbling in the dark. They reached the stairs, beginning their ascent. Each creak was a hammer blow against my sanity. I scanned the small office frantically. There was no other way out. The high window was sealed shut, even if I could reach it. Just then, a flicker in the corner of my eye, a faint, almost imperceptible light coming from the desk I'd used to barricade the door. The owners had left a charging tablet on the desk. I snatched it up, the screen springing to life. It was old, but perhaps, just perhaps, it had stored Wi-Fi information, and a connection to the owner's rural internet remained, somehow unaffected by the widespread outage. With shaking fingers, I desperately tried to connect to the internet, praying for a signal, any signal. The footsteps were on the landing now, moving slowly down the hall towards the office door. The scratching sound against the glass returned, softer this time, right outside the office window. They knew I was up here. The tablet screen flickered, then, miraculously, the Wi-Fi symbol appeared. It was weak, agonizingly slow, but it was there. I fumbled to open the emergency app the owners had told me about, a direct line to their remote security service. As the footsteps paused right outside the barricaded door, a voice whispered from the other side, low and sibilant, "We know you're there." The tablet finally connected, sending the silent alarm. I heard a sharp intake of breath outside the door. Then the footsteps retreated, hurrying down the stairs. The scraping outside stopped. Silence returned, but it was a brittle, tense silence, broken only by the storm and my ragged breathing. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. It felt like hours, but was likely only minutes. The security service had relayed the alarm to local law enforcement. When the police finally arrived, lights flashing through the trees, they found the house just as I described. Doors unlocked, no signs of forced entry. They swept the property, the woods, finding nothing. No footprints in the churned mud outside, swallowed by the torrential rain. No discarded tools, no sign of anyone retreating. They checked the locks, confused. The only oddity was a small, smooth, gray stone left neatly on the welcome mat, something I hadn't seen before. Nothing was missing, nothing disturbed, except for that chilling detail of the unlocked doors and the feeling of a presence. The police were polite, but their expressions conveyed skepticism. Just the storm, they suggested. Maybe I'd forgotten to lock the doors in my panic. But I knew what I had heard, what I had felt, and the brief, terrifying glimpse of those eyes. I left the next morning, unable to stay another night in that house that felt so profoundly violated. The owners were apologetic, but also confused. Nothing like this had ever happened before. They couldn't explain the unlocked doors or the strange stone. The experience shattered my sense of security, not just about that specific house, but about any place I might consider safe. The darkness holds a different meaning now. A canvas where unseen things move. The sound of rain against a window sends shivers down my spine. I still house sit sometimes, but I check the locks obsessively, and I can't shake the feeling that something is always watching, waiting for the lights to go out again. Was it just burglars casing the joint, scared off by the alarm? Or was it something else? Something that didn't need to break in? Something that wanted more than just valuables? Leaving behind only questions and a lingering, cold dread that no amount of light can dispel.